Okay, so for part 7 of the Autism and Structured Reality series, last episode we talked about the 3 temptations and what owns you. That said, the Beatitudes is your path towards self-transformation through growth. It all is laid out right here. So something to consider about the Beatitudes is it comes from the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is the longest account of Jesus' teachings. It's 3 chapters. It's roughly 15 minutes is what it's considered as. The 15 minutes, the greatest 15 minutes ever spoken. This is like our code of conduct, our instruction manual, how we should live. The Beatitudes is who we should be. So the Beatitudes are the first messages from the Sermon on the Mount, okay? We're going to talk about the 3 temptations as well. We're going to integrate these, okay? We're going to understand what these messages are. And there's some pretty cool hidden messages in here, especially about developing the self. Okay, so the first one is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so I want to just first highlight this because you might know, you might not know, that there's 2 of these Beatitudes as present tense for a reason. And the rest of them are future tense, but it's building. Okay, what poor in spirit means is humility. Another way to think about this is confidence. Confidence in saying that I can't, I need help. I cannot do this alone. Can you explain that better? Or can you help me understand this? People in society, they have this definition of confidence and it's very limited or incorrect even. People think about confidence as like this can-do attitude. I got this. You got this. I can do it. I can do it. That's transient. It's fake. Your brain will understand that. As that confidence wears off, that little fake transient spike of confidence wears off, you're going to resort back down to stress and your inability to pull from the data sets and the rule sets, your adaptive responses on how to handle the situations. Okay? Confidence is when your perception of yourself matches reality. Whenever this is in good correlation, if you want to do like this for correlation, like a complete overlap, or how much of that is off, how much of your perception of yourself is not aligned with reality, because maybe you can't do it. Maybe you don't have it. You have to be able to say that and appreciate that, accept that, and then understand what you need to do from there. Confidence is whenever your perception matches reality. And are you willing to accept yourself or have that self-awareness in real time? So this is also about confidence and willingness. Willingness. This is a big part about human psychology because we talked a lot about thoughts in the last episode. And this is going to be self-awareness. Okay? Humans have an infinite capacity to think. We will spend an infinite amount of time spinning up alternative ideas for why we are the way we are. And that is not good. So this poor in spirit, having humility, confidence, and willingness to understand yourself right now in this moment. Okay? Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so you're at the point where you understand, like, I need help. I can't do this. I have these limitations. So the next beatitude is mourning, for they will be comforted. Mourning here isn't about grief or loss so much about, it's more directed towards internal loss. Because this is suggesting you must have emotional depth. You must be willing to sit with yourself, understand your limitations. You have to be willing to See your limitations. You have to shine a light. This is bringing the unconscious to consciousness. This is no longer spinning up those alternative reasons and thoughts for why you are the way you are. Truth will set you free. Okay? And this is very fascinating because this mourning is tied to comfort. The degree that you can allow yourself that emotional depth to go deep inside of who you are, the more comfort you will gain out of that. Because you are no longer resisting. You are no longer accepting false narratives as truth. Humans will love to distract themselves, okay? And this is all about that living in the here and now, even that prevents yourself from going down. Carl Jung, like his thesis, his core message is modern man doesn't find God because they don't go deep enough. They don't go deep enough to understand themselves. They're just spinning up those alternative reasons for why they are, and that allows them to persist in that false narrative. That's what we want to avoid. This will be a little bit of, this is difficult. This is a lot of suffering. Philosophers that I include in this series, like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky's characters are fantastic. The reason why Dostoevsky can expand these deep psychological factors with humans, albeit accurate, is he's doing it with a narrative. He's doing it in a fictional way. And that allows us to accept what he's saying. If it was whenever people write like Kierkegaard or Nietzsche, whenever they're talking about the human being, or St. John's on the cross even, it's difficult. It's more difficult for us to understand it, and we will label that as something like nihilism, because we don't want to face that reality of human life. Human life is dark. But something with like Dostoevsky is they're characters. So that's a big thing. So you have to be vulnerable and willing to see your limitations, okay? This is future tense. They will be comforted. When? Maybe the question is when. So something that before we move on is transformation requires honesty. It's not just the insight. It requires honesty, okay? Because we're building up to here. We're not there yet. We're barely getting to this. We're barely getting to self-awareness. Okay, we'll talk about what this is. The next beatitude is probably my favorite. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Meek is strength. And it's also courage. But it's control. Controlled strength. Controlled courage. Do you have the capacity to handle the situation that you're in? Life is hard. Your encounters, your situations are hard. Are you equipped to handle it? Are you like a Navy SEAL or Delta Force? They're trained to suppress their stress and take care of the objective. That's why they're so fascinating. This is what this is. It's the saying. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Can you handle your situation? Okay? This is very powerful. This isn't impulse. It's no longer having impulse to return to that comfort level of what is false. It's allowing yourself to seek truth. Okay? This is courage to go live your life under your values, what's important to you, your meaning. That's the next one. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. This is a lot right here. So the first temptation is turning stone into bread. Okay? This is the Lord's Prayer. Give us today our daily bread. Okay? The reason why hunger and thirst for righteousness is here because this is motivation. This is now motivation towards goals. Directed motivation. You are now orienting to the world based off of your values. Why? Because you have courage to face life. You have courage to go seek what's valuable to you, to fill and correct these limitations. This is a very powerful beatitude here. And the first temptation is no longer in play. At least it's not a temptation now. You might recognize it and be able to get lost. This is a very cool beatitude here. Courage is gained from this meekness, and this new path begins. Remember, we talked about the value system, that little internal calculator. When rewards are high, you repeat that. When cost is high, you avoid that. This is an equalizer. These two are your equalizer to be like, I can persist. I don't quit. Okay, this is a big thing here because your biology, our central nervous system, remember I say this several episodes, even the old autism episodes, is the brain, the spine, the central nervous system does not want to work. It just wants to respond. It doesn't like to work. That's why we build habits. It automates responses and conserves biological energy. Remember the component of the value equation. The value equation, again, is the delta in value of reward minus cost. Habits conserves and limits the exposure here, the expenditure of metabolic cost, and that's our preference. However, we can get trapped and be stuck with easy things. Remember, we also drew the box. This is the box. This is everything who we are can be fit in a box. It's just a perimeter. These are our limitations. These are not fixed. So if you have the pursuit, the strengthened pursuit to understand your real goals, these motivations now, you can work on expanding this out and pursuing your life, a satisfying life. That's what these Beatitudes are building up, okay? Because we're developing the self in real time. We're developing ourselves in real time like this, and then we're propagating it out. That's why there's present tense and future tense. So transformation becomes real when the self no longer merely behaves differently, but values differently. This is a pursuit towards your values, okay? Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Okay, this is after the humility and the emotional honesty, and then the regulation and the strength to control yourself, and the pursuit towards different values and goals, meaningful ones. And as we're building through these Beatitudes, we're going to start to introduce judgment. Judgment is big from Jesus, especially in the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount book ends with judgment, Matthew 7. Judgment is not good. We're going to build up these next couple of Beatitudes on the metabolic cost of love and hate. We also talked about performance and the second temptation, that external validation, external identity. Okay. This is helping us navigate the world towards our goals with strength and no longer judging people. Remember, this is also a snap judgment answer key. When things are aligned here with your experience, your expectations, your predictions, what you want and think others should be, you will accept that. If there's a little difference, if something you encounter in the world is outside of this expectation, this judgment, this experience, this desire that you think the other people or the world should be, you will reject it. It creates friction. You don't even know that you're doing this. This is a snap judgment of accept or reject. So mercy is not weakness. It's not allowing people to run all over you. It is understanding. It's an understanding that emerges after you confront your own limitations. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, this is a big thing. Pure in heart is starting to have deeper meaning. We are starting to build internal congruence, okay? Because when we see things outside of our judgment or outside of our expectations, things that are different, we will no longer act reactively or impulsively. We will be more accepting to others, okay? This is pure in heart. This is pure in heart from this beatitude, self-transformation view. This is alignment. The self here will stop dividing itself and trying to make sense of itself merged with society. And as we're building through this, temptations will weaken. Temptations are no longer temptations. The evil one will have to find more of your weakness. And that becomes more difficult because you're strong. You know yourself. That's what we're doing here. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. So let me fill this in here. This is compassion, empathy. This is true compassion and empathy for others, okay? This pure in heart is internal. There is nothing like feelings from your heart, your instinct, your intuition. We have a pretty good episode on autism and intuition. It's a pretty good one. This is internal moral clarity. Okay? This is very powerful on how you create, how do I say? This is almost necessary for you to be able to persist in a social world. We are social creatures, so we need compassion and empathy for others and internal moral clarity. So what? Somebody is different from you. So what? You're not the judge. Your role is not to judge others. And we're going to work towards a very fascinating and underrated, maybe hidden message of the Beatitudes right here, okay? Because Peacemakers is relational alignment. Can you build relations? This is the message. This is a big message, okay? And there's something that I want to say. It's not about social comparison. It's not about subjecting each other. It's like humans love to subject each other. We create these things like SES, social economic status. That way we can just visualize our differences, visualize our have-nots. What is the purpose? We are reducing power here as well. We have worked through the first and second temptation of proving yourself for others and living off of instinct. And now we are building, you don't need to force people into being something different. That is exhausting. That's what I wanted to talk about with these 3 Beatitudes right here. These are aligned with judgment. And there's something hidden in judgment that you need to understand. You will understand it, but I want to just make sure it's conveyed. Whenever you hate somebody, whenever you have hate, anger, there is a lot of energy used, consumed for that hate. It's exhausting. Hate is exhausting, and it will deplete your biological energy. Conversely, it's a complete opposite. Love, compassion, empathy, and acceptance for others is building. It provides you biological energy. It feels good, but you have net benefits, net gains for biological energy. It's fascinating how that works. If you think about the Sermon on the Mount, it's 3 chapters. The bookend is judgment. The Sermon on the Mount has 3 main goals: building yourself, building how you orient with others, and putting yourself on an upward aim, putting yourself on a path that you can do greater than you're doing now. In the Word of God, in the Word of righteousness, fulfilling the Word, Logos. Peacemaking is not about the absence of strength. It's not about being ran over. It's strength that no longer needs aligned under control. You don't have to organize control over others. This is big. This is big in things like psychology. Okay? The last beatitude is, blessed are those persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay, here we go again. The second and last of the 2 present tense blessings. There's 2 present tense, and the rest of these are future tense. There's a reason why. What persecuted for righteousness means is value, identity, and self-respect. Persecuted for righteousness is being true to yourself, remaining true to yourself with self-respect. This is a big thing for the here and now. Okay? So if you want to talk about change, this is a perception I have about psychology and change with humans. It's a 2-part process. Okay, and I thought about this before I made these connections with the Beatitudes several years ago. Okay, change comes from self-awareness first. You have to be aware of who you are, what you're doing. And remember, we'll spin up an alternative explanation and reasons to ourselves for why we are the way we are. We will resist truth. But once you get self-awareness, you have to accept yourself. So self-awareness is humility, poor in spirit. Are you willing? Self-acceptance is value, identity, or self-respect. If self-awareness is hard because we'll spin up alternative reasons and thoughts for why we are the way we are, self-acceptance is magnitudes more difficult. It's hard for us to self-accept. And a lot of times, these are all external reasons. If you find yourself blaming others, woe is me type thing, and you're not allowing yourself to accept yourself, you will not change. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. In this audio episode, I quote that. It's from Carl Rogers, probably one of my favorite psychologists. But you can't have change without self-acceptance or self-awareness. In other words, you cannot have change without these first and last Beatitudes. The Beatitudes comes full circle. That's why the Beatitudes is doing two things. It's doing it now in real time and propagated over life. So one thing that you can think about is you're building yourself. You're taking this box and building it out. Okay? And you're expanding that through time over and over. You're expanding yourself. You're making yourself greater. So you need the first and last Beatitude to get you on the path to change. And then these other Beatitudes fills in how you act over time. This is present tense and then propagated throughout your future with the values listed out. This is where change happens. I can't speak on that enough because I'm just going to call out every Christian, because people will read the Beatitudes and just continue on reading without understanding any of this. And then they're stuck. They're lost. They're probably even reading different parts of the Bible. Maybe they'll read one of the apostles. Maybe they'll go read Peter. And they're stuck. They're lost. They have their willingness and their direction is still missing. Maybe they'll read the Old Testament, which is fine. But if you don't understand Jesus, you won't understand any of it. I don't understand why you just bypass the Beatitudes. If you've gotten to salt and light, Matthew 13 through 15 or 16, and you're still wrestling around with this, you need to go back to early Matthew 5. What are you reading? What kind of purpose do you have with reading the Bible? Are you doing it just to do it? Or are you transforming your life? If you understand the present tense gives you change and propagates your life across time with these other Beatitudes, then you're in good shape. Because this is why these are the first words spoken on the Sermon on the Mount, the longest account of Jesus' teachings. It's all right here. When you want to talk about change in life, you have to go here and here. Otherwise, you're just being tricked with temptation. Remember the quote about phenomenology. Humans have a subjective self-perception and a subjective perceptual world. How are you going to find the truth? The truth will set you free. You have to look inward. The whole Bible is about the reader developing the self. That's what the whole Bible is about, especially the Gospels. Strengthen yourself, and then you can orient the world. You can navigate the world with righteousness, but you have to strengthen the self. Part 7.